Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got our 7th installment in Watch It Wednesday, where we're going through some found footage we have of the ship. And it seems to us like this was taken in 1999 when the Navy was about to turn the ship over to the museum. So what it's looked like so far is they had some contractors go through with an old VHS recorder and try and film virtually every compartment in the ship to document the condition of the ship when they hand it over. This is invaluable to us because the ship's been open for 20 years, so I've only been here for 4 years. So sometimes it's hard to tell what are changes that the museum has made versus changes that were made to the ship when she was in mothballs or active service. So this video shows us what the ship was like when the museum got it, and that lets me know, okay, if this is different now, we as a museum have changed this. So, first a word of warning. This is a guy with like a shoulder-mounted 90s era camera, so the footage is a little grainy and it bounces around pretty badly. So if you get motion sick, you may need to take some breaks during this video. I know I certainly do. Otherwise, there's some really interesting footage here. In the last couple of videos, the last video we watched was about the ship's engineering spaces primarily. Not sure what this video is going to get into. Prior to that, we'd seen a lot of the living and working spaces on second deck and in the superstructure. And there's a link in the description below to the playlist. If you haven't watched those other videos, you want to go back and check them out. Otherwise, let's get to it. So we are starting off in the barber shop back aft. That was really interesting. This footage is really interesting. You see that there's a sink over here that leads me to believe that there used to be another barber chair there, and we can see the mounting point for it sticking up through the tile. I assumed that meant that the chair was removed by the museum, but clearly it had been removed during the ship's service. They didn't need as many chairs as they had, it seems. Also, the tile in there looked green, and I believe we have retiled it in tan, which usually we try to replicate what was originally in there. So we might have to go back and retile that someday. Back here around the berthing spaces, aft of the aft armored bulkhead, are a ton of berthing spaces that lead back to the down to the refrigerators and back to the barber shop, the print shop, laundry. So we're in one of the aftermost centerline berthing spaces right now. This one is currently on our Yellow Line tour. You also, if you spend the night on board during our overnight encampment program, you'll be sleeping in that berthing space or one of the ones nearby. So this was the print shop. You can see that the Navy took everything with them. So any of the equipment you see in there today is stuff that we have stripped off of other ships. We recently had a volunteer putting a lot of that equipment back together. Much of it had to be cut in half or disassembled to get down here. This is the dark room that you're in now. And so it was just sitting there for years. So we've had a volunteer start putting it together, and the space is getting back to how it should look. This is a head, a bathroom, leads down to a sewage tank. And this part of the head, this is the area with the showers. The other part that we just walked through is where the washers and dryers would have been for the after part of the ship for the crew to do their civilian laundry. You can't do that in the regular laundry room. Now we're going through a repair locker. This repair locker connects the berthing space to the laundry room. You can see much of the damage control equipment is still in here. Not necessarily how it would have been. It looks like it's been stacked up and wired together for transportation. i.e. the ship being towed to mothballing and also towed out of there. Oh, so now we've gone down below into one of the storage spaces. There you can see the framing of the ship and the armored box that surrounds aft steering. We, not too long ago, did a video on this space, and there's a link down below in the description to the video of this. This is one of the after sewage handling spaces. I believe this is the starboard side one. There's 2 back aft and 1 up forward. And we did a video on this space as well. And everything looks pretty darn similar to today. This is so deep in the ship it's well off of the tour route. Alright, we've hard cut back to a shower. So we're back up in the bathroom that has the vertical ladder to get down to those spaces. Now we're heading aft towards berthing again. And now we've hard cut to USS New Jersey. Great, I love that boat. Oh, this is the damage control workshop down below the berthing space that we were just in. That's the air conditioning, or the refrigeration machinery room. So we are just aft of the freezers and refrigerators at this point. This is some of the equipment that chills all that. See all the flask racks there in the corner there would have probably held Freon, I imagine, was the gas that they used for the cooling, but I might be wrong about that. Something similar. Here we've got some dry storage. Also in the same vicinity. There's the flooring all stacked up against the wall. Wired in place. We've got some shelving here. And here we are in one of the berthing spaces. This is, I believe, looking forward. Outboard on the starboard side. TV rack and a bunch of game tables. The door here is to the bathroom we use as the female head during overnights. And again, some of these racks are what you'll get to sleep in if you spend the night on board the ship. And here's that head that we were just talking about. These heads are some of the larger ones on the ship because so much of the crew sleeps back here. There's only the 2 enlisted bathrooms, 1 on each side. So we're just looking around the berthing space right now. Some of the dehumidification hosing. Ladder goes back up to the mess deck. Now we're crossing over to the port side of the ship. Notice none of the beds have mattresses. We have to pay something like $150 a mattress for each of the beds on board. Bigfoot sighting. And here's one of the refrigerators. Here's a black hole. Here's one of the refrigerators. Yeah, so we're in the after one, which I believe is refrigeration, the forward one being freezers. Now we're outboard on the starboard side. It's looking forward. And this is looking outboard, and that's looking aft. Each of these refrigerators has a tag over the door. There's the flooring that should be in there. The tag over the door that says whether it's for milk, eggs, cheese, butter, meats, vegetables, thawing. They're absolutely cavernous down there. We've hard cut into a different one. I wish you would focus on the bullseyes a lot more in these shots so we can figure out where we are easily. Not much to talk about in this storage compartment. The paint is in absolutely immaculate condition. Great shot at some insulation there. I wish he had spent this much time in the engineering spaces. In the last video, he's jumping all through the engineering spaces, and here he's like, "Ooh, look at these floor plates in this storage room. This empty white storage room." Look at how white those walls are. I wonder if this is early in the filming process for them, because later on he doesn't take time to look at the bullseyes. Or as much time to inspect the room. Okay, so we have hard cut. We're down in aft steering. So here are your motors on the starboard side. Motors for turning the steering rams. We're heading aft at this point. Hydraulic tank. Oh, this space is so much better lit than it is nowadays. We don't go down there very often, so when the lighting dies, we don't maintain nearly as much of it as the shipyard had to, while the ship was mothballed. So that is the rudder post there, and these are the rams that are pushing it left or right. The armored bulkhead there on the outside. It's about 13 inches thick. Thicker even than the main armored belt. Heading forward, heading aft. This is now the port side rudder. Yeah, we've got a lot more peeling paint in there now after 20 some odd years. This really looks like it's in immaculate condition. The big takeaway from this from these videos is that after what would it have been, 8 years in mothballs, the ship hadn't deteriorated at all. Around 1999, they did an inspection to see if the ship was able to be brought back, and there was certainly work to be done, but overall the mothballing process worked. Mothballing was a really inspired concept for saving ships in reserve to bring them back when needed. And it absolutely works, and it devastates me that our mothball fleet nowadays is so small. If a ship like New Jersey can be brought back when she's 40 or 50 years old and be a first-rate capital ship, the argument that, oh, it's so old, doesn't really work. Are we up on main deck now?
This is a paint locker.
Yeah. Yeah, we use this space as a paint locker now. It's at the aft end of the main deck superstructure. Was some sort of damage control office. But between the sinks and the eye wash stations and the other things in there, and it's got a ventilator. So we decided to use it as a paint locker instead of the ship's original paint lockers, which are much deeper in the ship, further away from where we're doing work. Notice they cut holes in the bulkhead in spaces that weren't going to be otherwise ventilated, such as that one. But they left the piece that was cut out hanging there so you could weld it back in place if the ship was called to service. We have not done that, so that those spaces continue to be ventilated and preserved as a museum ship. Decontamination station on the main deck. Now we are in one of the bathroom on the main deck all the way aft. You can see that there's been some water, the pipes have deteriorated, you've got some water damage in here, but nothing significant. This ship is in so much better condition than the ones that I've been on board to strip parts off of in the modern day reserve fleet. Granted, she's only 8 years out of active service at this point that this video is filmed. But my God, some of these shots are absolutely immaculate, like the crew just walked off. Another repair locker back aft on the main deck. There's a lot of shoring, mechanical shores there. Now this is interesting. Or the damage control space. If he turns right and continues to go forward, the berthing spaces that he goes into, the main deck berthing spaces, have been completely gutted on us to be turned into exhibit spaces. Those bags are probably filled with damage control plugs. Yeah, keep going forward, keep going forward. Bigfoot sighting there to the left. So this is our kids' compartment nowadays. The sort of wall to the left is the back of the bunks. to keep bunks out of the passageway. Thwartships passage. So all of this has been gutted. This is probably the best documentation we have, aside from the booklet of general plans, of what this would have looked like. So if we ever wanted to get rid of the exhibits and recreate this space as it should have been in service, we would go down to Wisconsin, see what hers looks like. We would pull out the booklet of general plans, see what it was supposed to look like in 82 or 83, and then we'd look at this video of how it actually was in 91 when she was decommissioned. Okay, and a hard cut from the main deck into one of the uptake spaces. There, this is probably the aftermost uptake space on the main deck center line. So the grating for the air being sucked in, the intake air. Some framing, not much to look at here. Notice there's a lot of water damage in this space. Looks like some standing water throughout. That might indicate that the aft stack, the cap over it, was leaking. Or it might indicate that some of these pipes have failed. Yeah, look at the rust in the overhead there. The water gets in, it evaporates, it becomes humidity. It starts to corrode the steel on the overhead. Of course, while the standing water is corroding the steel on the deck. So we had a jump there I wasn't expecting. We were looking at some of the after berthing spaces on third deck and what they accessed. But before we got to see all of that, the refrigerators and the laundry rooms back aft, we jumped up to the main deck again. So that was interesting. We're starting, as we get towards the end of the footage, we're starting to realize that we don't have everything. And there's some interesting and accessible things that are missing. Like Libby and I were just talking about, oh, you know, maybe they couldn't get down to here for whatever reason. But there's some stuff on second or third deck that you can easily walk to while holding a camera and a flashlight that we aren't seeing yet. So we're going to talk about that more in the future. For the time being, we have at least one more Watch It Wednesday in the future with this footage, maybe two, and stay tuned. Remember, there's a link in the description below to the playlist of the past videos we've done. There's also a link in the description below for ways to donate if you want to support the museum. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. If donating money isn't a possibility at this time, liking, sharing, and subscribing helps other people find the channel, and that also helps us out. Thanks for watching.